Hello, everyone. I'm Marj Matchee, and with me is Kentrina Jenkins, my co-host, and this is We Got Your Six. So, as promised, this episode, we're bringing back our friend and fellow advocate, Dave Bona, and bringing his insight to the table because last episode we had him on, people were happy about how you presented things, Dave, and we talked about alcoholism, we talked about a few other things, and it really had an impact for some people. So, as promised, we're going to bring Dave on because he has a great way of explaining for people suffering from quinism or methylene poisoning, the connection between the brain and the gut and how crucial, as Dave says, it's absolutely crucial to understand that. Welcome, Dave. I'm so glad you joined us again.
Hello. How are you doing?
We're good. Just note, people, my co-host, Kentrina, has to be a bit more silent than usual today because she just barely got her voice back. So she'll be doing
okay.
And she can message me if she runs out, and I can ask the questions. So we're still.
Okay.
Hey, so Dave, I'm just going to let you run with this, and we're just going to talk about, as you put it, how crucial it is to understand this connection.
Okay. The brain-gut connection with regards to quinism. Well, you have to understand that, you have to understand what the injury is. And I keep on going back. Every time I discuss this with everyone, I keep on going back to what quinism is. It's an actual physical injury. And where the injury is it's to the brain, but more specifically, the brain stem. So it affects not affects, but where the drug concentrated and caused the most damage was on the top backside of the brainstem. And how do we know this? It's by the physical symptoms people present. This is responsible for the rages, because what's damaged up there, right at the top backside of the brainstem, where it goes into the brain, there's right above where the brainstem goes in is the temporal lobe, okay? And right below there's a little valley co-located with that temporal lobe. So what happens is the drug concentrates in that little valley. And how do we know this? Is by the physical symptoms that people display. The loose stool, acid reflux, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
My PTSD and stuff's just a bit flared up. I've been having a bad couple of methylene days. I just sort of got off my diet a bit there the other day, and I'm just sort of lagging behind a bit. I have a little bit of what's called brain fog happening.
Well, I mean, and it's what you're talking about right now. It's kind of like, I'm sorry.
So, well, I've got kids, so what happens then is the kids like to get candies and treats and stuff, and without even thinking, some days while they have their little candy, you reach over and you start munching on a couple of candies, and then next thing you know, you start that little candy cycle, and then next thing you know, you're drinking a Coca-Cola, and then you're just fucked, for lack of a better term. So, and it's by the physical symptoms that are displayed, because if you Google dorsal nucleus of the vagus, that is the nerve cluster that is located closest to the surface of the brainstem in the area where the methylene caused the damage. And what the damage is it's scarring to the surface of the brainstem, and it's actually burnt holes through the brainstem and damaged the underlying structures. Your brainstem consists of nerve clusters that pass through that area, pass through the brainstem. That's all your brainstem is nerve clusters. And the one that lies closest to the area, again, is the dorsal nucleus of the vagus. Google that one, and what you'll find is the majority of your physical symptoms can be attributed to that damage to that nerve cluster. I'll give you an example. Acid reflux. okay? The nerve that carries the signal from your brain to your stomach to produce acid goes through that nerve cluster. And that's why we get a lot of people suffering from out of control acid reflux, because basically the stomach detects the food in there, and it produces acid reflux, or acid. But the thing is, the signal to turn that off comes from your brain. Okay, it's passed from your stomach into your large intestine. It's moved further down the road. That signal is not organic to the stomach. It has to come from the brain. So what happens then is your acid production is left on even when there's nothing present. So that's related to the signal coming from the brain trying to pass through this damaged tissue. It's not carrying that signal through that damaged tissue. Now, the guts, large and small intestine, this is one that almost every single person suffers from. And what it's called, there's an actual name for the syndrome. It's called loose gut. And what that means is and again, just like the stomach, the signal to produce the digestive fluids comes from the brain. Whoops, knocking tools off my workbench here. And then what happens then is your guts are basically the switches left on, or the actual openings for things like the gallbladder and that, they can't close all the way, because not only does it affect the production of the digestive fluid, but it also affects the smooth muscle control, your ability to break up what's going through your digestive system. Okay, so what's happening then with the loose gut is why we're going shit, excuse the language, 4, 5, 6 times a day, is because all that digestive fluid is cleaning all the flora and fauna out of your digestive system. So what does that mean?
I know what that means.
It means
that
that
means you feel good.
that
yeah.
It means that there's nothing to hold what you're eating in your digestive system long enough for you to digest it and extract everything your body needs to function. And this is crucial to understand this one portion, because, for example, depression. What's the clinical diagnosis for, not clinical diagnosis, but what causes depression is the lack of serotonin. If you have no serotonin, you're going to be down in the dumps all the time. Where does serotonin come from? Serotonin is actually produced in your digestive system. It adheres to the platelets. It's transported through your bloodstream and is deposited in your brain when the platelets pass through there. You're not digesting what you're eating. Your body's not extracting the chemicals and nutrients it needs to produce the serotonin. You're going to be struggling with depression. Every single person
that's a simple but powerful comment. Like we need to say that again. So you're saying to us that if your food is literally heading out the back door 4, 5, 6 times a day, whatever it may be, it's not staying long enough in the gut to produce the flora and fauna that you need to produce the serotonin and everything adheres to the platelets. So that serotonin is not going to the brain; it's going out the back door, basically.
Yes, it's basically like you go to the grocery store, you buy a truckload of groceries, you haul them in your house, and you throw them out the back freaking door.
Yeah, okay.
It's like you're not getting any benefit from what you're getting.
And it makes such sense that if you have no serotonin, your depression just increases, and there's no feel good in you, right? Like that's the feel good hormone, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So
makes sense.
Yeah, but here's the thing: like we've got guys with like irritable bowel syndrome. We've got guys that have had their colons removed. This is common stuff with people that have been poisoned. Like, what happens when you remove your colon? You end up with
never gonna feel good.
You end up with a colostomy bag for the rest of your life. I've talked to guys that aren't even 30 years old, and they've had their colons removed because what's happening is all that digestive fluid is damaged. You know, their colons, their rectums, and like it's just burned everything out of there. I've got guys that have holes burned through their intestines, and where their holes are burned through is right by like where the gallbladder, because it's dripping all the time. You know, like, and it's just irritates because inside your small intestine, I believe they're called cilia.
Yep, cilia.
These small fibers that actually extract all the nutrients and stuff. Like, when these things are inflamed, because what's the digestive fluid? You break it down to its basis form. It's acid.
Acid, yeah.
And it's irritating all the cilia and stuff. And this stuff can't extract. So how do we combat this? Like this overproduction of digestive fluid, like with acid in the stomach. The only thing that a person can do is use a product like Nexium. Okay. And with the small and large intestine, people can replace the flora and fauna. Like, I went from 1992 to 2002. I never had a solid shit, ever. It was like Montezuma's Revenge. It was like 5, 6, sometimes 7 times a day. It would be within 15 minutes of eating a meal. You know, I planned my day around my bathroom function, like having to go to the bathroom. Like, if I would not leave the house after I've eaten until I've had a shit. Like, I would not go to work in the morning, and I would get up early enough to have breakfast at home just so that I could time it so that I could have a shit just before I left to go to work.
So living like that with a loose stool all the time just dictates how you live your life around it.
Yeah, it totally takes
Needing
over
to know
your
where
life.
the first and most available toilet is. It's scary to leave your house.
Like, I've shit my pants so many times, it's not even funny. It just got to the point where
you're incontinent, right?
It just got to the point where I had a little system. I would actually cut my underwear off me, clean it up as soon as I'd notice it. And you could do this anywhere, in an alley, you know, wherever you need to do it, in a bathroom, and you just cut your underwear off, or you take one of your socks off, you know, but you got to do what you got to do to survive, you know? Like.
So now, Dave, give us that little bit of hope you got for this, because I know that you have improved. I mean, we know this is life, right? And how it is for people, and they're sitting here listening going, yep, that's me. You know, that's me.
With the acid reflux, the only thing we've come across that seems to work is the pharmaceutical stuff to counteract that acid that's actually being produced. Okay. The second thing that we've come across for the loose stool is you have to replace that flora and fauna. Okay. Now, don't even screw around with the basic flora probiotics. Go to a health food store, go to the lady, and ask them for the strongest probiotic they have. And what you'll find, and this is what you got to look for. Usually the strongest probiotics you're going to find are going to have to be kept in a refrigerator.
Right.
So yogurt and stuff like that, it does work, but it's not strong enough, especially in the initial stages when you're trying to get a handle on this. you have to get the super high strength probiotics, the highest probiotic count you can. And then what I did when I first went, like Teresa really got tired of me, because not only are you going to the washroom a lot, but you're very gassy and stuff because you're not digesting what you're eating properly. So she just got tired of that, and she started me on super high strength probiotics. Within about 4 or 5 days, I was shitting. I had my first solid shit in over 10 years. It was a memorable event. Wow. And the thing was, as long as I stayed on the probiotics, I had a solid crap. But here's the knock-on effect to that. Because what you're doing is you're slowing down what's going through your system, so your body has a chance to absorb what it needs to function.
Like the serotonin.
Yeah. But not only that, there's stuff in your digestive system now, so the cilia and everything's not as irritated.
Right.
It's able to do its job. So once you get your digestive system working again, what you'll notice within a short amount of time is a little bit of that brain fog, and that'll lift. Because like, if your brain doesn't have fuel to function, you're going to be suffering from like neurofatigue, forgetfulness, just your day-to-day function. You are not going to function. Mm-hmm. It's because your brain's sole purpose when the absence of fuel, we'll call it fuel, for your brain to function, is absent. What then happens is your brain focuses on doing its basic functions, keeping your heart pumping, keeping your lungs moving, keeping you safe. So when it goes into this basic functioning mode, notice the third thing I said is keeping you safe. So you become like more sensitive to outside stimuli that could be perceived as a threat. So
that makes sense.
Yeah. Really so does.
So it increases that fight or flight kind of syndrome that we have.
Yes.
And
but like
your body's just at its basic functioning.
Yeah. You're just a fucking depressed.
Don't trust anything, right?
Yeah. Like you just become
everything around you.
Yeah. You just like you don't have anything left extra. Like things like if you have kids, like you have very little tolerance for noise and busyness and activity around you. One of the things with that, especially for the dads and the moms that are suffering from this, is simply get a pair of noise canceling earphones. Because what that'll do is it'll cut the noise outside of the room, and it'll just keep you present. Because when your system is all scrunched down like this, and it's keeping you safe, it goes into that hypervigilance mode, right. And it's looking for threats. So if you hear a noise out on the sidewalk or a vehicle driving by on the street, your brain's going, okay, that's a threat, that's a threat, that's a threat. And instead of being present in the room with your kids and that, you're always looking and thinking about, okay, what's going to harm me? Because that's what your basic functioning is. Yeah. Heart beating, lungs working, keeping you safe. There's a few other things there, but that's the most applicable to the mefloquine poisoning stuff. Okay. So now here's the thing. The crucial part of this is not just getting your guts working, but keeping your guts fueled. What do you put in your guts? Well, what does your brain use to produce all the fuel and we'll call what your brain uses fuel, just to keep it simple, because there's all sorts of really complex terminology there that's used. But we'll just keep it simple and call it fuel. How do you keep your brain? How do you keep your brain fueled? What does your brain use to fuel itself? It's protein. Okay, so things like cheese, almonds, you know, various types of meats, you know, things that are protein rich that are not processed.
I was going to say that meat, you'd want real meat, not processed meat.
Like, and that's why a lot of people struggle with McDonald's meat, burgers and stuff from McDonald's and that, because it's processed meat. Like everything is like, it's irradiated. They've got filler, they got all sorts of stuff in there. They got sugar, they got, and that's why, I'll give you an example of this. I sometimes go work with my neighbor when he's behind, and he's cheap as shit. But and the deal is, you got to buy me, you got to feed me when I come work for you. That's how you pay me. You buy me coffee and buy me my decaf, and buy me some food. But he's cheap as shit. But so first couple of times I went and worked with him, and we're working out of town. It was kind of funny because, you know, you go down, you drive down. It's about, you know, 2.5 hour drive to where we were working. And so on the way there, we hit the McDonald's drive-through. You know, you get a decaf coffee and you get your McDonald's breakfast meal and all that, you know. And we get there, we start working. So by mid-morning, I'm starting to become a little bit forgetful. I'm starting to become a little bit grumpy. So we go for lunch. You know, we have McDonald's lunch. Again, you know, same old. And then by, you know, mid-afternoon, like I'm forgetting simple little things on the job site. Like I'm like cutting a block of wood. You know, I go measure what I got to cut, turn around, walk 5 steps to the cut table, and I sit there, pull up my tape measure, and I go, okay, what the fuck? You know, then you turn around, go measure it again, turn around, walk the 5 steps back, and you're like, and you forget again. Then you turn around, walk back, and you, on your 3rd time, you actually write the number down on the side of the tape measure. Go back, look at your tape measure, mark it, cut it, go back, put it in. You know, that's an example of the effect of processed foods and not keeping your brain fueled properly. It's this fog. It's very subtle. It creeps in, but there's this not just the brain fog though. It's this irritability because you're just not functioning. You can't, like, you're starting to become easily swamped. Like if we're working on a busy street, I'm fucking completely done, because then, like I said before, you go into that like hypervigilance mode type thing.
You're not getting brain fuel.
Yeah, because your brain is not fueled. And this is one of the things that I come across a lot when I talk with guys, people that have been poisoned by meth, is they do not eat breakfast. You're so setting yourself up to fail that day just by stepping out that front door on an empty tank of gas. And if you're going to get your vehicle's going to get to the end of the driveway and it's going to conk out. And when your vehicle conks out, that's when you start snapping and losing it.
So even if they would have ate a handful of almonds to start their day, or something simple, anything protein,
real protein. Like I start my day. I'm a little bit lazy, so I start my day with a protein shake. Mm-hmm. I take a handful of blueberries, a handful of spinach, 2 scoops of really healthy protein powder, and a scoop of this greens, it's called.
Yeah, I got those.
Yeah, and I put it in a blender, and it doesn't even take me 5 minutes to make this. and I can literally have it made and knocked down in under 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It's super easy, but the thing is, I'm super loading my system first thing in the morning with protein, and I'm fueling my brain, I'm fueling my body. Yeah.
So
So
if you carry, and I know because I see, I mean, I've spent a lot of time with Dave.
yeah,
We advocate a lot. I've seen you when you crash from not having protein.
yeah,
I've seen how quickly it helps you when you get that protein back in.
yeah,
So for our listeners, your message is just like you said, absolutely crucial to feeling good. So it's getting yourself off of the sugars and the processed foods. It's eating pure proteins. It's getting yourself a high and highest count probiotic you can, which is usually in the freezer, you're saying, or in the fridge, and staying on that, right? So you
yeah,
said you slipped a little, had a few candies,
yeah,
and you feel it
yeah.
today,
But
just like that, right?
but not only did I slip a little bit with the candies and that, but uh, I caught myself. I was like, the other day I was in the toilet like 5 times. It was like, what the hell, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, oh shit, I haven't been taking my probiotic. So, and again, even this morning, I forgot to take my probiotic. So right after we get done this video call, I'll be running in the house and
Good.
grabbing a probiotic.
And a protein shake.
Yeah, well, I already had my protein shake this
Oh,
morning.
good job.
So I'm, yeah, by the time we get done this, it'll be about mid-morning. So I'll be going in the house, literally, I'll grab my probiotic, but I'll be grabbing some protein. And the form of protein I like to use is hard-boiled eggs, because you can keep them in the fridge.
Simple.
They're simple, and they're like just loaded with protein. So.
See, so that then, that's the message we're going to take away on this topic for sure. And people can send us, questions and stuff, and we can forward them to Dave. But just so you know, I believe, Trina, how's our email run exactly, so that people can email us, Dave, and if they have questions about this particular subject again, then we can bring that back on. So it's, do you have a voice?
So yeah, kind of barely. So in the description under every YouTube video, I put her email. So it's we got your, and then the number 6 program at gmail.com.
So we got your 6 program at gmail.com. So
and then you can also reach out to us on social media as well. So, and then there's
inbox any of us at any time should you have any questions about this episode or other episodes. And I guess I just want to recap now, Dave. So when you were talking about where the brain stem meets the brain and that little valley in there, is that what you're calling where did I write it? The nucleus?
Dorsal nucleus of the vagus.
Nucleus vagus.
Okay.
That's
Dorsal
that piece,
nucleus,
right?
dorsal nucleus of the vagus is the actual name of one of the nerve clusters. Okay. And there's like a whole bunch of nerve clusters that, let me find a wire and I'll show you what I'm talking about.
While he's doing that, I'm just going to recap. So he's explained all that. And the good takeaway is that you can deal with this through nutrition. Dave's a prime example of what nutrition will do for that brain-gut connection. In a nutshell, he's saying that constant diarrhea is constantly cleaning out any food you're putting in that's good for you. It's constantly heading out the back door. Nothing is staying within the gut. You're losing your flora and fauna, which is what will eventually cause the serotonin, which it should, to pass through the brain. It's not. It's all going out the back door. So Dave is just recapping, Dave, while you were away. Dave has found that by getting your gut online with a high count probiotic, high protein food, stay away from processed foods and sugars and synthetic things, and just simply eat right will help that serotonin or the flora and fauna to stay in your stomach longer and produce the feel good or serotonin throughout the brain that you need. Right?
Yeah. Okay. And here's an example. Can you see that?
Yes.
There's all sorts of different little wires inside this wire. And that's basically like your brainstem. And each of those wires will conduct signals to different parts of the brain. I should have looked at the diagram before I did the interview here, but the main one that is affected by the majority of people that have been poisoned by mefloquine is the one called the dorsal nucleus of the vagus. And that's the one that lies the closest to the surface in the area where this damage is. Okay, and you'll actually look at the chart of all the structures that the dorsal nucleus of the vagus controls. It's the lungs, like the oh, I forget the name of that thing. Goes into your lungs. Those bronchioles, I think they're called. It controls those, the muscle tone in them. But here's another odd symptom that a lot of people suffer. I suffer from this, and like half the people I talk to, as soon as I mention it, it's like, oh, that's what that is. Like the dorsal nucleus of the vagus also controls the muscles in your esophagus. Okay, so for example, it hasn't happened in, when was the last time we choked on something? It was a
good. You can't remember. That's been a while.
No, it was a while ago. It wasn't that long ago. It was at the movie theater. It's just like my throat just stopped working, and like I was actually sitting there in the movie theater. I started coughing because I couldn't. My throat wasn't able to push down what was there, and it just sat there. So prior to that. The most notable one was I was eating an apple there a couple of weeks back, and I was just sitting there eating away. And this is concurrent with my mefloquine, with my diet being, around Christmas time, my diet was off. You get a lot of pie, sugars, cream, all that crap, diet, Christmas associated. You go literally, you're off your normal diet and stuff. And so my mefloquine stuff's flared up. I'm a little bit more irritable, a little bit, everything's all, but here's the thing. The physical symptoms are increased. My tinnitus was up. My hypervigilance stuff when I'm in the city's up. But also what happens, and I'll give you an example. I bit an apple, was chewing on it, and I tried to swallow. And what happened was I started choking on the apple, and I had to basically spit it up, because what happens every once in a while is my esophagus will spasm, and it will not push the food down, because how your esophagus works, it basically tightens, and pushes something down, right? And what happens then is you can't swallow. It's just every once in a while when my physical symptoms are flared up, this happens. Another thing that's associated with this, it'll actually spasm. So you'll get a sharp stabbing pain in the center of your back that's sort of in line with your esophagus. And this is very common with mefloquine people. They mistake this sharp shooting pain as either a I got that brain fog on the thing.
Or something?
No, it's usually associated with cardiac events, or what is that? There's the main vein or artery that carries the blood down. Aortic aneurysm, with the sharp stabbing pains usually associated and misdiagnosed as those. I've done the full cardiac workup because of this pain, and I've done the full cardiac workup because of the mefloquine poison, not just because of this, but because what happens too is if you look at that chart on the different functions of the different nerve clusters, there's one that's co-located with the dorsal nucleus of the vagus, and I have what basically happens is it's almost like an atrial fibrillation. My heart will just go fucking crazy, like every once in a while.
Regular heartbeat, it says,
Yeah,
yeah.
irregular. But what'll happen is I'll be sitting there. My PTSD's not flared up. I'm like chilling out. Hadn't had any coffee. I'm just relaxing, and all of a sudden, my heart just starts pounding. And it feels like it's gonna come out of my fucking chest. Like there's no explicable reason for it. I've done the full cardiac workup, I think 3 times now.
Wow.
And to try and get a handle on this, between the sharp stabbing pain and this inexplicable heart rate issue stuff. So what I do know is about the heart stuff, we have got from the guys that I deployed with in Somalia, we have a few very notable individuals that were extremely fit that have died from cardiac incidents. Joel Sorby, Chuck Barnsley. Like, these are some crazy fit guys that shouldn't be having cardiac issues that have died from cardiac events, the depression stuff. Like, this stuff is insidious because you combine that depression, that lack of serotonin, with the mefloquine rages. Like, all of my active suicide attempts have been post mefloquine rage. Because what happens is you have a mefloquine, well, you witness them, Marj, you experience them. They are horrific sometimes to the loved ones. And when you come down off having one of these fucking extreme departures, like, the guilt and the shame you're feeling is extreme, because you don't mean to completely lose your shit the way you do. And you come down off of one of these and you're just like, fuck. And you combine that with individuals walking around with no fucking serotonin. That's why suicide is a listed side effects with this drug.
Disaster.
Yeah.
Dave, I'm gonna read this to you, and because we're talking about nutrition, and you brought up the blue chart.
Yeah.
Looking at it, and just about everything on here can go back to your gut brain connection and diet and having the protein.
Yes.
It's this anger, depression, anxiety, unusual behavior, mood changes, sleep problems, concentration, confusion, impulsiveness, personality change, agitation, nightmares, fear of crowds, paranoia, restlessness, suicide ideation, hyper alertness, bowel disorder, flashbacks, unable to multitask, memory loss, light sensitivity, dizziness, nausea, headaches, vertigo, and balance, speech, ringing in the ears, visual impairment, persistent cough, tremors and jolts, skin rashes, trouble swallowing, muscle weakness, irregular heartbeat.
Yes.
Just about all of those. I mean, it's not a cure, but almost all of those, listening to you can mitigate by proper nutrition, getting a probiotic,
yeah,
get some control of.
Yes. You can reduce the severity and the impact of the effects of mefloquine poisoning just by eating a healthy diet. It's 3 simple things. Drop caffeine from your diet, because what the caffeine does is the caffeine gets your brain going 90 miles an hour. If you ever Google it, what caffeine does to your brain, it's absolutely incredible. It lights up your brain and it gets it going 90 miles an hour. And what then happens is your brain exhausts all its fuel really fast. So if you didn't have caffeine in your system with what you had in your fuel in your system, you would have made it, to at least lunch.
Right.
But with that caffeine, an hour and a half, you're fucking done. you know, you're fucking flipping out, you're losing it, you're having road rage on the freeway, you know, like.
So caffeine's that bad of a kicker. So there's another
Yeah.
one, right? So
Yeah.
I know it's horrible. I'm not going to minimize anything, but I'm celiac.
Yeah.
So I understand the gut connection. I understand the cilia deal. I understand exactly what you're saying in that sense from my direction. And so I know how hard it is to give up, let's say, you know, bread and flour and all the good
Yeah.
things I gave up. But when I did, I got a much better chance at life. And I know how hard it is. So, I mean, you're living proof that this works. And I just can't encourage people enough to try to live that kind of a lifestyle. If you want to have a good life, I mean, as best you can with Quinism, there is hope. It's drop that
Yes.
alcohol, drop the caffeine, eat
Yep.
real food full of protein.
You just mentioned something there. Alcohol.
Yeah.
Okay. Alcohol and Quinism, they don't mix very well, because what happens is with the alcoholism or alcohol, even though it, you know, chills you out and mellows you out and all that, but it actually will push the symptoms, because the alcohol impairs your liver's ability to manage the inflammation. And when you got a lot of inflammation, you have neural inflammation, the first thing you're going to notice is your tinnitus is going to go, the volume will increase, and you're going to have struggle immensely. So
now that I think we've covered this topic pretty good, and we might ask you to, you know, answer a few questions. But before you go, Dave, can you touch on, we're going to be bringing in people as we go, but can you touch on neurofeedback? Because you started that process, and maybe just tell us how long ago and it helped you.
How I got into neurofeedback. Now, we got to be clear on some terminology here. There's neurofeedback, and then there's Loretta neurofeedback. When I first started doing this stuff, it was with neurofeedback. And what neurofeedback is a very basic system. It only works one part of the brain at the time. And if you don't have a properly trained provider, you can actually do more harm than good. So be very careful with the neurofeedback, because a basic neurofeedback system, I think, only costs about $20,000. And what we were having happen up here in Canada was a lot of the medical cannabis access companies were buying a couple of these machines, training up a couple of individuals in a day or two, and then sending them all over the place, wiring people up and doing it. That's not very safe.
No.
It's not. Because you're actually affecting, what neurofeedback does is affects the increases or decreases the electrical activity in different parts of the brain. If you're not actively monitoring and you're not properly trained to interpret what you're seeing, you can seriously fuck someone up. So be very, very careful when you're doing this, because Loretta neurofeedback, the basic equipment for Loretta neurofeedback costs $100,000. The programming and the yearly access fees are about $20,000. And the individuals that usually run the Loretta neurofeedback are highly trained individuals that can interpret the electrical activity in the brain and adjust it accordingly. So there's less chance of harm with that. So don't get me wrong, neurofeedback works, but be very, very careful and picky with who you get to do it.
I hadn't realized that, Dave. I hadn't realized that there were like $20,000 machines with 1 or 2 days. So that's super crucial information to people. You know, if they want to know like a good place to go in your areas, I mean, we can definitely help vet that as well through people like you and others who are taking it. So with qualified doctors.
Yes.
They're available.
There are, actually, it's kind of nice. I've actually had several doctors reach out to me, and they, like, especially got ones that deal with veterans. And I had one. It was kind of a funny conversation. He goes, "Okay, Mr. Bona, I've had numerous people refer me to you. What the hell is going on with this mefloquine?" And then I explained to them, and they go, "Makes perfect sense. It's a brain injury. It's not PTSD with my clients." And then the guy, and you can see him sitting there, hear him sitting there, like, mulling over what I just said. And then the one doctor said to me, because she deals almost exclusively with military. She goes, "This is going to comprise, I'm estimating, about 60% of my caseload." So
To me, that's so promising. Like, finally, the medical community is reaching out to someone like you who has the proper answers.
Yeah.
Wow. That
and
is
I'm not like, where do I get my knowledge from? Like, I get my knowledge. Well, I've lived it, number one, but I started a journey of understanding what the hell's going on with me. And, I reached out to Dr. Nevin. I reached out to all sorts of specialists down the States, like gut doctors, tinnitus doctors, to understand what the hell was going on with me. And along the way, I started talking to other people that were poisoned like me. Like, I had Bill Manofsky track me down one day, and he's the lead American down the States that's doing the same thing we're doing up here. And he is like a fountain of information for mefloquine. That's one of my best resources for understanding what this injury is. What's that?
I said, "Watch out, Bill. I'm going to be looking for you."
And it was actually, excuse me, sorry. It was actually Bill that made the chart, like that blue, the blue chart that everyone refers to.
The one I just read.
Yeah. So it was actually from Bill too, because I was in a group one time and I was like, okay, like, how is this credible? How do we know? And then, Bill spoke up and I made the chart.
But but where did my knowledge come from? But the bulk of my knowledge came from is talking to people. Like, I've lost count of how many people I've talked to. It's north of 200 now. Majority of them veterans, a bunch of civilians. Like, the other day I was talking to someone from Germany. I had and England. I had a guy here in Saskatchewan I was talking to yesterday. Like, there's I'm not very active. You don't see me very active online in that, but I take probably now, I get a minimum of about 2 or 3 phone calls or messages from people that have been poisoned. And it's not just here in Canada anymore. It's like, I've talked.
Daily, you mean?
What?
You still get that many daily, you mean?
Not daily, but a weekly now.
Okay.
Weekly, because I don't actively go out and
well, you have to slow down, my goodness.
Yeah.
And I guess that's why this is such a good platform, because we can get you to say it all at once, and so many hear it all at once, right? So, and we can go back and listen to you again.
The point I was trying to make, though, is my knowledge is anecdotal. It's from me talking to people. And when you talk to like 10 different people that are suffering from the same mysterious injury, it becomes, well, you're sitting back and it's like, okay, well, that's the exact same thing that the last 2 people I talked to. And then you incorporate that into your next discussion with the next person. And then you slowly build this list of symptoms and understanding of what this injury is. And then you take that knowledge and then you apply it to your own life and you go, okay, what's working, what's not working? Okay, it's a brainstem injury. Okay, let's research acquired brain injuries. Then you look at all the research, you do all your research on acquired brain injuries, and it comes down to 3 simple things: diet, exercise, and healthy lifestyle, and you apply that to the mefloquine poisoning stuff. And then that's when you can start to get this thing beat. So back to my, we were talking about the neurofeedback and that. Okay, so there's neurofeedback, Loretta neurofeedback, but The reason why I just talk about Loretta neurofeedback is, and Bruce Gibbons pointed this out, is because usually the people that are doing the Loretta neurofeedback, they have several complementary treatments that they do concurrent with the Loretta. They don't do exclusively Loretta neurofeedback. A person that's going down this type of brain injury treatment road, they don't usually just do one treatment modality. For example, the guy I see in Saskatoon, the guy that I talked into putting the PMF coils, which are pulse magnetic coils that are run through the brain or a computer that are pulsed at different frequencies that can do different things to your body, like increase or decrease inflammation, promote healing and stuff like that. I talked him into putting those coils, PMF coils, over top of the back of my brain and just blast me. I had to talk him into it, but he had to research it, and it was kind of funny conversation because we were sitting there the one day, and I got thinking about, because he put the coils on my arm, and I crushed my arm out a few years back, had a beam roll on me and crushed the muscle. Didn't break the bone, but crushed the muscle. And I've always had pain in that arm every time I made a fist. And he asked me one day if I had any pain anywhere that just won't go away. And I told him, yeah, in my arm. Fuck. And so he put the coils on there, and 3 treatments, I've got no pain in my arm anymore. So I got, and that sort of sat with me, and it's like, okay, and this is around the time, okay, brain stem injury, muscle damage, and I was just made that leap. Well, I went to him one day, Darcy, is there any chance you could put those coils on my brainstem and blast me? And he just, no, Dave, we can't do that. But here's the funny thing. Darcy's a very, very proactive guy. And he actually did some research. And about a month later, I walk into his office, he goes, Dave, I can. And I downloaded, or I ordered the software to do it. And he literally hooked me up, and we put the coils over top of my brainstem, and he hit me with the program, central nervous system repair and heavy metal detox, I think it was, because the heavy metal detox works really good at inflammation control. I think, I can't remember exactly why he chose that, but I think that was why. And he blasted me, and I'm sitting in the chair, and I wasn't even there under the coils for a minute, and literally I'm sitting there, and the whole house starts spinning on me, and I'm like, whoa, and he's like, what's going on? And I go, the fucking house is moving. And he goes, whoa, and he goes to turn it off. I go, no, leave it, turn it up, you're hitting the right spot.
No.
And he did that same treatment for me 3 times. And after the 3rd treatment, my vestibular system, or my vestibular my vestibular issues are like, they're cut down to 1/10 of what they were before. Like, don't get me wrong, I still have problems with balance and stuff like that, but I can get out of a chair. Like, usually before, if I got out of a chair like that, I would have to literally pause, hold the arm, let my vestibular system reset, and then stand up fully, because I would be all dizzy and shit. Like, I don't have to do that anymore.
That's amazing.
Like, and that's just from the treatment. And then plus, he uses the PMF coils. He places it on my stomach right over the vagus nerve, and he promotes healing on the vagus nerve, because the vagus nerve, what is the vagus nerve? It goes right up into your brainstem.
Dorsal vagus.
Yeah, so he promotes healing in that area. So what I'm trying to say is, there are treatments available. They're not out of a pill bottle, other than the probiotics. They will address the physical symptoms. Because once you get a handle on the physical symptoms, like, that's when you can regain your life. You know, it's simple things you can do. Like there's 3 things, remember I mentioned. Number 1 is cut down on your, like cut out caffeine. Like you'll see me drink coffee. I drink decaf. And the thing is, once, because I love coffee and I'm kind of weird that way. And I can't have caffeine. Like I can tell when the lady screws up at the drive-through and gives me a caffeinated coffee. Within 2 or 3 sips, my brain will start to tingle. And I will literally, if I keep drinking that coffee, my day is done.
Wow.
If I'm in the city, I might as well just turn around and go home, because I'm going to be fucking, by the end of the day, I'm going to be fucking a mess. You know, road raging and just snapping and losing on everyone and just done. So
as much as you love coffee, it's far better cry to drink your decaf and have a nice day instead of triggering everything with caffeine. Yep. It's amazing that it does it that quickly and just caffeine alone. Like, that's crazy.
I can feel it. As soon as that caffeine kicks in, my brain will start tingling, and I know it's like, okay, I'm fucked. And I'll open the window, dump out the coffee.
Wow.
And I'll either go grab another one or say fuck it and do without. So caffeine. And the next thing for you Army guys, manage your PTSD. And how do you manage your PTSD? Don't watch war movies and shit all the time. Don't go looking for stuff to trigger yourself. And that, because, you know, I struggle with that myself. You sort of trip into that because it's like a comfortable blanket, you know, being triggered. It's like, it's what you know, it's your brain knows, you know. It's like
if you're a NASCAR driver, you're going to watch NASCAR, right? If you're a soldier, you're going to want to watch Army shows, right?
But it's more deeper than that. It's being triggered as opposed to being normal. It's once you get your brain, you almost become addicted to the trauma. So manage your PTSD. Don't get yourself triggered, because yeah, that's kind of hard to do, you know. Don't get yourself triggered, but there's things you can do to reduce stuff that triggers you, like you know, being around crowds and, you know, all sorts of stuff. Like there's ways you can function and not kick up your PTSD stuff. Because what you're going to find once you start managing the mefloquine symptoms, you're going to find your PTSD symptoms are going to go down. And then once you, like, seriously, that's why we're having such a problem with PTSD right now, is like, for myself, I didn't know what the fuck was going on. They're saying, manage your PTSD symptoms. Do this, do that. And when I was in treatment, and I'm like, fuck, I don't even know it. Like, I'm triggered all the time, it seemed. And in all actual fact, what it was the mefloquine poisoning was actually causing a lot of my PTSD symptoms, because the hypervigilance associated with, you know, the damage to the vestibular system, the auditory processing, you know, what you see, what you hear goes through your brainstem. And if one of those signals is not hitting your brain at the right time, it'll just spike your anxiety. For example, when we were cavemen, our bodies are hardwired to be aware with our peripheral vision for waving grass and stuff. So if you're hearing stuff and seeing stuff, and those signals aren't reaching the part of the brain that processes those signals at the same time, that's like a little red flag, like, oh, there's the grass is waving and a saber-toothed tiger is going to jump on me and eat my head. You know, like, it's your brain can't differentiate between the grass waving and these signals not hitting the part of the brain that processes signals at the same time. You know, it can't differentiate between that. It can't differentiate between you're in a mall, and with your vestibular damage, your peripheral vision gets irritated when you have a lot of people around you. You know, like a lot of people moving on both sides of you. Like, picture yourself driving on the freeway. Why are you having road rage all the time on the freeway? You know, there's a couple of things going on with that. You know, eventually your vestibular system gets irritated by processing all this these signals on the side. And when your system is not getting the signals in an appropriate time frame, it will put more energy into trying to read the signals. So it just sort of this negative feedback loop. So what I'm trying to get at with my point with that was, once you manage the mefloquine poisoning stuff, you'll be able to get a handle on your PTSD stuff. It's like like magic. All of a sudden, I got to talk about a bit of trauma stuff, not too much, so just be aware. A lot of my deployments were in Middle East and Africa, and a lot of my trauma stuff was related to Africa, around kids being injured. So how is that connected to me walking into the supermarket to pick up some groceries? You know, like, why am I getting so triggered in the supermarket when there's no kids and stuff present, especially kids from Africa? Now when my PTSD stuff flares up, I can identify what it is, and then I can do management techniques to manage it, because I know what my triggers are now, because I've filtered out all the mefloquine bullshit. You know, it's not related to the vestibular, it's not auditory processing. You know, this is a trauma related trigger. And I'll give you an example of one. I was at the swimming pool 2 years ago with my kids, and in walks these 3 little African girls that they're refugee kids, just fresh from Africa, and they were of a certain skin tone, like from the region of Rwanda. And instantly it was just like I was triggered. And that is a PTSD trigger. And the point I was trying to make is, there's PTSD triggers, and then there's mefloquine triggers. Once you separate the two, you'll have this fucking thing beaten. Like, you will be able to get so much functioning back in your life, because you'll actually know when you're out and about, oh, okay, well, I got triggered here. What's going on? And then, you know, it's, you know, sight, smell, hearing, you know, what you're, you know, you'll be able to narrow down what your fucking triggers are. Like,
it's very promising. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's daunting when you're first starting out, but one day at a time, and
yeah. And
work
pick
on
one
things a
little
little
piece.
at a time, right?
Yeah. So what I'm trying to get at is caffeine, cut the caffeine out.
Yes.
If you're military, manage your PTSD symptoms, identify what your PTSD symptoms, what your mefloquine symptoms are, and manage your PTSD symptoms. Because when you go all hypervigilant, that has the same effect as drinking like a pot of coffee. It will dump, because your brain goes into protection mode. It goes into protection mode. It will try and identify every threat around you and everything like that. And it burns through the available fuel in your brain. So PTSD doesn't cause a rage, but having your PTSD flared up will result in a mefloquine rage, because it's burning up all the available fuel for your brain to function. So now the third thing, treatment. There is not a lot of treatment available, especially down the States, because what's happening is the pharmaceutical industry has a lot more sway down the States than they do here. They actually can affect state insurance companies to not fund things like Loretta neurofeedback, because the pharmaceutical companies are losing clients. Here in Canada, it's different, especially with Veterans Affairs. They're very proactive. If there's a neurofeedback or a Loretta neurofeedback provider available in your area, they will help you do that, but you have to ask for it. Veterans Affairs is not there to help you. They're there to administer your file. That's it. You have to have someone advocating on your behalf to get this. And usually the person that is your family doctor. I went through, when I first came out here, 4 different family doctors, because I don't do pill pushers. I need someone that can do paperwork. It took me quite a while, but I finally found a doctor that is good at paperwork and understands that I don't do pharmaceuticals. So he's very proactive on my file. And he can write, you know, and he doesn't take a lot. I watch so many people fail with their treatment plans because they don't have a good doctor that can write them a letter requesting specific treatments.
Well,
So,
now we have that letter available also too,
yes,
right? So people can
yes,
take that.
yes.
So Dave, I got to wrap us up.
Okay.
See why we always need to bring you back on. It's just so much to tell. Like an hour
Yeah.
ago, how, and we have just touched the surface again, right?
Yeah.
So, like once again,
Before you cut me off, though, if
I never cut you off.
If you want to have a really good outcome with your mefloquine poison and you've been absolutely struggling and you don't have access to Loretta neurofeedback and stuff like that, just two simple things, or not one simple, one not so simple, or three things, pardon me. Cut out the caffeine completely out of your diet. Healthy, non-processed foods and non-manufactured sugars. And if you're able, every single person I've talked to that has tried it, that has mefloquine poisoning, has had great success with it, is ketogenic diets. Simple things that you can do without having to go through a doctor.
And get a good probiotic that's in the fridge.
Yes, yes.
Four things. So honestly.
Actually, the fifth thing might as well throw in there, just in case this is the only clip anyone ever sees. You know, just limit alcohol. We don't have alcohol at all, right? So
alcohol is like a negative feedback loop. It works at numbing all the anxiety and all that, but you combine the depressive effects of alcohol with the damage it does to the liver with managing inflammation, and you will actually spiral your mefloquine symptoms in. You will increase your mefloquine symptoms exponentially. It's not double or triple. It's like it's huge amount. It'll negatively affect your symptoms. So
great information, Dave, as always. I just can't thank you enough for this. So we're going to ask you back on again. I know we're going to need to touch base on some more. We'd like to talk about that blue chart that was, anyways, the symptoms on there. And I know more people will be sending in questions, and, you know, it gives us a really good, solid hope for people that drop the alcohol, drop the caffeine, eat high protein, non-processed foods, and a keto diet, like you were saying, and look into Loretta neurofeedback. But for that, you can reach out to We Got Your Six, and we can give you information regarding that as well. I mean, we do know the credible sources within a few areas, and we can actually talk to doctors to see if we can find something in your area as well. So thank you for joining us. This is this episode of We Got Your Six, and we hope you found it informative, and we look forward to your feedback. Thanks again, Dave.
No problem.
Have a
You guys take care.
Take care.
Bye.